So Amber, tell us a little bit about your world in marketing at ABB and how you're looking to use marketing communications to engage the different audiences that you reach out to in your work.
Well, I would say, ABB is really a big supporter, for example, of Formula E. And as Simona said, this is really sort of a way to showcase where we're testing the boundaries of technology. And that's really one of our objectives, is to test the boundaries of technology and to transform societies and industries in a way that is more productive and more sustainable. So this is why at ABB we've invested quite strongly in our eMobility solutions portfolio, from home chargers to the ultra-fast chargers you see next to highways, and also why we've invested strongly in Formula E. And it puts the technology out there. It shows the world what we can do with electric vehicles. You can see it on TV if you're lucky enough to live in one of the 12 cities where the race actually comes to. You can see it on your city center streets. But with all of this, I still feel like, there's still a large portion of the population that doesn't understand or doesn't know the benefits of electric vehicles. I, for one, was one of them. More than a year and a half ago, I wasn't aware of this. And it wasn't until I joined the segment and joined ABB in the segment that it became, more familiar to me, and I understood, and I was surprised. So when you came to me with this idea of World EV Day, it was really a no-brainer, because this is our opportunity to really share our knowledge and our experience with what electric vehicles can do for societies with a broader audience who may not be aware of it, through simple education, short video how-to videos you've seen. You might have seen also today we released a video where there's some sweet little children who are asking some really important and big questions about electric vehicles. And you've got some people who are giving really straightforward and simple answers. So yeah, I mean, we just need to, I think, find a way to get the message out to a broader population of people, and then it becomes really simple.
Well, thanks very much indeed for those opening thoughts. I suppose what you framed there is a situation where we had for 100 years or so a mode of propulsion, the internal combustion engine, and then suddenly, in a very few short years, a whole new energy system has arisen, and a new powertrain system with electrification. What do you think the challenges are for reaching the kind of next wave of consumers, the next wave of people, to get them to understand the power of electrification, the joy of sustainability in transport? How do we reach this next wave of consumers, do you think?
I think we need to continue to educate. We need to continue to share the messages. I think probably we should be looking also at some different channels, leveraging some different tools. I mentioned the video that we had where we interviewed the children. In preparation for that video, I wanted to understand really where our children are in their knowledge of electric vehicles. And I was really surprised when I started interviewing some of the neighborhood kids, how aware they are of air pollution and the benefits of electric vehicles, and the burning of fuel that comes from normal internal combustion engines. They didn't use the word internal combustion engine, but they were well aware that electric vehicles are good for the environment, or better for the environment. So I think trying to find ways to reach that audience, especially as they're going into their teenage years and they're getting ready to buy their own vehicles, I think we need to reach a little bit further and try new ways to reach them. For example, maybe looking at TikTok and Snapchat as alternative ways to get those messages out.
And tell me a little bit more about how we can possibly engage other harder to reach audiences, to reach out to diverse communities, to reach out to people for whom cost is maybe an issue with an electric vehicle. How do you feel within the marketing communications community we can help to communicate messages to a wider audience?
I think it's important to understand where where the knowledge is today with some of those audiences. So for example, if you see any press releases about electric vehicles or blogs about electric vehicles, usually at the end of those, you see the opportunities for public comments. And it's interesting, if you start reading through some of the comments that show up in those locations, the very obvious disinformation or unknowing of electric vehicles, it's demonstrated in many of the comments. For example, I was reading one actually just recently, and one guy was saying that, you know, I can't afford a new electric vehicle. I can only afford a used electric vehicle. It's the same way as the internal combustion engine. And he said, there's none in my city, but I can't drive to get one. I can't drive outside of my city to get one because I have to make it back to my city. And how am I going to make it back if the range is shorter than the distance from my city? And that just demonstrates that there's a knowing about how many chargers are available, public chargers are available already in many countries. So yeah, I think it's first understanding where the questions are and then really targeting our messaging to address those specific questions.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks very much indeed, Amber. I'll now open up some questions to our audience, and please, if you're in the online audience, do submit more questions both to Amber and to Tim and Poppy, our subsequent speakers. There's a question come in, Amber, from someone who's not disclosed their name, but they're saying, you know, there's a problem around range with charging vehicles, and they're saying until the range issue has been sorted, it doesn't matter how much work we do in marketing communications, we need to sort out the engineering side of things and the charging infrastructure side first. Perhaps we need to do both in parallel. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like the technology's come a long way. If you look at the average range of an electric vehicle now versus where it was, you know, a few years back, it's significantly more. There's even one vehicle manufacturer that has recently released a message that they can reach 500-mile range. So range is, I think, it was a concern in the past. I think it's continuing to be used without full understanding that the technology has advanced a lot since then, and it's continuing to get better.
Yeah, so following on from that, there's another charging infrastructure question from Max, who asks about ABB's strategy and targets regarding charging infrastructure, especially across Europe. Can you disclose any targets, or is that not something you're happy to talk about?
What I can say is that ABB has invested really strongly, especially in Europe. You can look back in the last month and see a couple of press releases of some major facilities that we've opened in Europe. So, I mean, we're very grounded here. We are also involved in the policy making around electric vehicles and regulations around that, and pushing for further knowledge about this and sharing that knowledge widely. So I think where our investments are showing very much that we're strongly committed to this in Europe as well.
There's another question coming about perception, people's perception that the technology has not advanced very much over recent years. What would your thoughts be on addressing that question of perception around the technology?
I'm not sure where the question is coming from, because I'm seeing actually just the opposite. Some years ago, I mean, we couldn't even imagine charging our cars with 50 kilowatts of power. And today we have charging up to 350 kilowatts of power for cars. And even for trucks, we can reach up to 600 kilowatts of charging power. So I think it's just sharing this information and making people more aware about where the technology has come from and where it's going.
So thanks very much indeed to all our panelists. We will now open up the conversation to questions between you on the panel. So Poppy, I understand you had a question for Amber at ABB about how perhaps consumer concerns in the US and the UK are different. So perhaps Amber, you could maybe, through your global understanding of the difference between UK and US audiences, address that question for Poppy and for the rest of our audience, please.
So actually, when I saw that question pop up, I did a quick search and found that the average distance, or the longest distance between between two charge points in the US is 119 miles. And in the UK, I think it's like 47 miles. So yeah, probably there is a bigger concern among Americans about the distance, but the important thing we need to communicate always is, for example, I think the lowest range on electric cars, the latest electric cars is 150 miles. So even in the US case, the longest distance shouldn't be a problem. The other thing that I noticed when I was mentioning that you can find a lot of information about how people are thinking when you read their comments in response to blogs about EVs or news releases. And one of the things that came up a couple of times there was the lack of electric trucks. And I don't know too much about the demand for trucks in general in the UK, but in the US, there are lots of truck drivers. So I think this is probably also maybe one area of difference that you see that more Americans are driving trucks and bigger cars.